rugged wilderness area of northwest Sutherland's parishes of Assynt, Edrachillis, Durness and Tongue has around 2,600 people in an area in excess of 800 square miles, with the lowest population density in Western Europe. This area of scenic beauty includes 3 national scenic areas and a UNESCO geopark. Over on the eastern side of the far north, a very different landscape is seen. Facing north to the North Atlantic Ocean, the east coast entices us with rugged clifftop scenery and wildlife. North and West Sutherland and Caithness form the most northerly counties in Scotland on the mainland, separated by the Pentland Firth from the Orkney Islands. The county flags represent the strong Viking influence in this area. Since the end of the Ice Age, people have lived in this area. These partially reconstructed Neolithic chambered cairns at Camster and Caithness were originally built more than 5,000 years ago, making them one of the oldest stone monuments in Scotland. The castle of Old Wick was built by the Vikings, who from around 900 AD arrived in great numbers and colonised Caithness, or Catanis to give it its Old Norse name. Caithness was part of the Kingdom of Norway up until it transferred to Scotland after the Treaty of Perth in 1266. But the Viking influence is still strong in the local dialect, and the vast majority of place names are of Norse origin. Our journey starts at Kyleskew on the west coast, where in 1984 the new award-winning Kyleskew Bridge was opened by the Queen, replacing the old ferry that saved motorists a 100-mile detour. During World War II, a top-secret naval mission was set up to test out small midget submarines they trained at Kyleskew as it resembled the fjords of Norway. Their mission was to sink the German battleship Tirpitz. In 1943, the midget submarines heavily damaged the Tirpitz and it was relocated to Tromsø, where it was finally sunk. We now explore the island of Handa. Up until the mid-19th century, Handa supported a relatively large population for its size. The island had its own parliament, very similar to St Kilda. And traditionally, the oldest widow was given the title Queen of Handa. The potato famine of 1848 led to the migration of the islanders to Nova Scotia and Canada, and it has since then been uninhabited. Just across the Sound of Handa lies the village of Scowrie. Many people of the parish used to bury their dead on Handa Island due to the fact that the wolves would dig up the graves on the mainland, as the following poem on Edrachillis Shore from 1846 illustrates.
On Edrachillis shore the grey wolf lies in wait. Woe to the broken door, woe to the loosened gate. Thus every grave we dug the hungry wolf uptore, and every morn the sod was strewn with bones and gore. Our Mother Earth had denied us rest on Edrachillis' shore.
The Northwest Highlands have a unique landscape and boasts panoramic mountain views, sandy beaches, tranquil lochs and a fascinating history. The land between the two fjord-like sea lochs of Laxford and Inchard is called the Empty Quarter, and on the west coast the scenery comprises of the Luisian Gneiss Rock basement, with numerous lochs, small coves and craggy headlands. And at 2.8 billion years old, these rocks are the oldest by far in Europe. The area is shaped by the action of glaciers during the last ice age, where in between the mountains are secluded glens and caves that have yielded fossil evidence of ice age reindeer, brown bears, polar bears, the northern lynx and wolves, from the last glaciation at around 10,000 years ago. There was a larger population present in this area before what was to become the Highland clearances took place between 1750 and 1860. These clearances forced clansmen and women off the marginal land to make way for more profitable sheep rearing. Feudalism moved to capitalism in less than 2 generations. The eviction of tenants went against the principle that clan members had an inalienable right to rent land in clan territory, but this was never recognised in Scottish law, and it was gradually abandoned by clan chiefs as they began to think of themselves simply as commercial landlords, rather than as patriarchs of their clanspeople. The actions of landlords varied. Some did try to delay or limit evictions, often to their financial cost. A few chieftains or landlords displayed a complete lack of concern for evicted tenants, and this led to the mass emigration of people from this area to Nova Scotia and other parts of Canada. As we follow the Laxford River inland, we come to the impressive Lochmore Lodge, weirdly out of place in these empty lands, and is the centrepiece of the Duke of Westminster's Rainforest Estate, a large traditional sporting estate famed for its deer stalking, trout and salmon fishing. The estate covers an area from Kylestrome, where we originally started off on our journey, to the mountainous Rainforest area, which is not a forest in our use of the word, but is the Highland name for an area of rugged mountain wilderness with very few trees. This rugged area has not changed since the retreat of the glaciers 10,000 years ago. The Rainforest Estate extends some 150 square miles and contains the mountains of Ben Stack, Ben Arkell, and at almost 3,000 feet, Foinaven, whose shattered white quartzite scree and narrow ridge make for amazing hill walking. Anne Ross, who lived on the Westminster estate at Achfarry for many years, can give us an insight into life in this very remote area.
I arrived in the late 70s at Lochmore Lodge. The menfolk worked as gillies. They escorted fishing parties and deer stalkers, where the gillies went with the gamekeeper and guests, using Highland ponies to carry back the deer carcass. The womenfolk did housekeeping in the various lodges and cottages on the Westminster estate. There was no television or radio in Achfarry then, and it was 14 miles to the nearest pub. We had impromptu ceilidhs in each other's houses, where there was always someone with an accordion or a guitar and plenty of people to sing.
In the remote Strathmore lies Dundornagle, an excellent example of a broch, which is a dry stone roundhouse found only in Scotland and mostly in the north of Scotland. Dundornagle dates back at least 2,300 years ago to the Iron Age. The broch tower stands to an impressive 24 feet high in places, although when originally built it would be roughly over 50 feet in height. The walls in between the broch would have been hollow, with staircases in between for access to separate floors. The triangular door lintel stone was for prestige and decoration, and this would have been the home of a local Iron Age chieftain. To the north is the most northerly Munro in Scotland. That is a mountain over 3,000 feet. Ben Hope dominates Strathmore, and the single-track road must be the loneliest road in Britain. We come to the central point in the whole northern landmass at Altnahara. This desolate hinterland is part of the flow country, which covers huge areas of Sutherland and Caithness, These flows are a rare type of peatland which forms only in cool places with plenty of rain and covers a landscape like a blanket, hence its name blanket bog. Due to the cool, wet and acidic conditions, the plants don't fully rot away when they die. Instead, they build up deep layers of peat. The flow country's bogs at Fiag and Loch Shin, we can now see the peat with exposed tree stumps, remnants of what in the past was a huge forest covering northern Scotland in much warmer climatic conditions. The word moin in Gaelic simply means peat. The blanket bogs of the flow country in Sutherland and Caithness are important in our fight against climate change. Plants absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and use the carbon to build the plant structure. When the plants die, the carbon is released back into the atmosphere unless the plant material can be preserved. That's why peat bogs are important as a defence against climate change, because the moss and other plants don't fully decay. Bogs act as a carbon store or sink. The flow country's peat bogs in Sutherland and Caithness alone store about 400 million tonnes, more than double the amount in all of Britain's woodlands. But if the bog dries out or is damaged, the carbon is released as carbon dioxide, adding to the effects of climate change. That is why it is so important for us to maintain our peatlands. Continuing our journey to the east side of the Moyne Peninsula, we come to the scenic Kyle of Tongue, and unlike Loch Erible, is a shallow tidal sea loch, famous for the tongue oysters cultivated and harvested by hand in the shallow tidal waters of the Kyle. The name Tongue has Norse origins. It comes from Tunga, or tongue of land projecting into the loch. Before the causeway was built in 1971, the only route to the west from the village of Tongue was by the road around the Kyle. Tongue was effectively an island community, relying on the sea for its communications, until 1828, when Thomas Telford completed the road south to Lairg. In 1836, a road to Thurso followed, complete with a daily coach, and during the rest of the 1800s, efforts to complete the road west to Durness continued, though as late as 1894, anyone making that journey relied on ferries to cross the Kyle of Tongue, the River Hope and Loch Erible. The scenery changes dramatically as we move across the border into the county of Caithness. The rugged, mountainous scenery of Sutherland is replaced with a relatively flat, treeless landscape, hence it is known as the lowlands beyond the highlands. The underlying geology of most of Caithness is old red sandstone. This consists of the cemented sediments of Lake Arcady, which is believed to have stretched from Shetland to the Grampian Mountains about 370 million years ago. Fossilised fish and plant remains are found between the layers of sediments. The coastline is a major scenic feature of Caithness, with water to the north and east of the county. Caithness has a long coastline, and the sea has had a significant impact on the history, economy and outlook of its people. In the west of the county, blanket bog and peatlands abound and form the eastern part of the flow country. In the east there is less peat and very good farmland. There are more brochs in Caithness than there are anywhere else in Scotland. The Yarrowsbroch was excavated in the 1890s. The structure would originally have been as high as a two-storey house. When the Broch was built around 2,000 years ago, the area would have looked very different. The climate was much warmer and drier, lending itself to agricultural and pastoral activities. Many species of trees and bush would have grown, and the peat landscape would not have existed in this area. The stacks at Duncansby Head near John O'Groats are visually impressive. One of them, the Great Stack, is over 200 feet high and is actually higher than the cliffs on the mainland. Sea stacks are formed by long-term wave erosion, typically of horizontally bedded rock, which are cut by joints. Either the cliffs recede rapidly or solid rocky promontories are slowly undermined to form arches that eventually collapse, leaving offshore stacks. Continued marine erosion causes stacks to collapse, leaving a stump. Duncansby Stacks is of the Middle Devonian age, 386 million years old. This poem in Caithness dialect describes our unique Caithness coastline.
Oh Caithness, placey o' my birth means alley world to me. Its coastline like a bairnie scribble, rough and jaggedy. Great chunks of rock houked off as stacks by time's remorseless waves. Its salt encrusted cliff tops homer skirling scory breaves.
And finally, we come to the end of our journey at the most northerly point of mainland Britain, Dunnet Head. This, the final verse of the poem Ma Caithness, gives us a heart-rending summary of this northern land.
Our folk are hardy, head till be, but played right hearty hosts till them that travelled far and wide till settle round our coasts. This placey gets a blow your skin, ye tune in till it's bite. I'm glad I've Caithness in my veins, it sets my bleed on height.
We have travelled from the rugged west coast up and around the northwestern part of the mainland and east on to Dunnet Head and the Pentland Firth. In our journey of around 300 miles, we have seen the majesty of the Ray Forest Mountains, the dazzling indented sea lochs and beaches, flat treeless islands and bird colonies, rugged headlands, impressive sea stacks, amazing waterfalls, the oldest rocks in Europe, the blanket bog flow country, and the unique ancient archaeology left by the original inhabitants of this remote area. Sutherland and Caithness cover an area of around 2,700 square miles, with a population of under 40,000. It is impossible to cover everything about an area this vast in such a short film. Therefore, in the next feature in this Sutherland and Caithness series, we will take a closer look at the people, their occupations, towns, villages, farming, crofting, arts, craft, customs and lifestyle of this northern part of Scotland.